Gymnastics has always been talked about on this show as a sport that you should do when you're younger. That goes for not only people who want to be elite gymnasts, but also the general population and even those who go into other sports. This is because the foundations of gymnastics and gymnastics training gives people within and out of the sport a fantastic baseline to move forwards from. Today I'm going to be talking through what gymnastics actually teaches you, and not just the things that we've already talked about here on the podcast. For the non-gymnasts in the audience, I hope you learned something new. And for the gymnasts in the audience, I hope this reiterates some of the lessons that you have to learn. I hope you enjoy. So, obviously, as mentioned, gymnastics is a very good sport to start when you're super young. Like, when you think about the best sports to do when you're young, and not necessarily to do at an elite level eventually, but sports to get into to give you a good body awareness and also start to teach you things like discipline and determination and dedication, things like that. That's not going to be the main focus here today, but I do want to touch on it briefly. I've known many gymnasts, most who start young, get to a certain level. It's a pretty high level, but they're still very young when they get there. So getting to things like the national squad when they're 13, 14-ish. But then they realize gymnastics isn't for them and they move to a different sport. 9 times out of 10, they will get really good and they will get good results within that sport. I've seen things like pole vault and high jump, and so a lot of athletic events, but there are also other events that people will transition from gymnastics into. That's because the foundations that gymnastics teaches, as I said previously, the body awareness, but then also the strength and the ability to hold yourself up and things like that are vital in a lot of different sports. And because gymnastics isn't specific to one part of the body, like running is specific to the lower body. Mostly. Obviously, you train upper body, you train things like that, so you've got more powerful arm swing, etc., etc. But by and large, it is a lower body sport. You don't need to hold yourself up on your arms when you're running, so it's not as transferable. I know that some sprinters do end up going into things like monobob and skeleton, things like that, but by and large, it's not as transferable as a sport like gymnastics is. And this applies to other sports, not just gymnastics. Things like martial arts also are quite transferable because, again, they give you your body awareness and they train more than just one part of your body. But from what I've heard, obviously I'm in gymnastics, so I'm going to be quite biased. Gymnastics is normally the go-to. Obviously, things like discipline and determination and hard work, all of those sorts of things. But that's not very specific. It's not specific to gymnastics for sure. And pretty much any sport will teach you that. Today, I want to go through the things that I've specifically learned within gymnastics, and not as a recreational gymnast, but as an elite gymnast, and things that I think are very transferable to other parts of life, not just sports, but other parts of life in general. Things like delayed gratification. I spoke about this with Caleb Drotsky, who was a gymnast from New Zealand. I'll link the video. It's a very old one, so I don't know how good it is, but it was an interview I had back in 2024. And yeah, so it's a very old one, but we spoke about this a little bit, delayed gratification. And again, I spoke to Joe Fishburn about this as well. The ability to put time into something and know that it's not going to pan out in the short term. The ability to work at something and know for a fact this is going to be a long-term investment. Oh my God, I'm just plugging myself in this one. Roddy Mackay, I spoke to him recently. I think that's going to come out next week. He spoke about John Atkinson. John Atkinson was the head national coach of British gymnastics 30 years ago, I think. And what he put in place, the building blocks he put in place, have resulted in the outcomes that we now see. British gymnastics is now an international power within gymnastics because of what he did 30 odd years ago. And he knew that going in. He knew that there would not be a reward, a short-term reward out of it. He said, you will not see any outcomes of this for the next 25 years. But in 25 years, we will be in international power gymnastics. And that's exactly what happened. And that is an extreme example. It's the most extreme example I could think of at the very least. But that's something that gymnastics has good at doing. Because when you first try a skill, you know for a fact you're not going to put it in your routine for the next competition that you're going to do, unless it's a really easy skill that you're just doing because you need a specific element group. For example, if you need a group 1 high bar element, you just chuck quast and hope it works, which is what I've been doing because you need a group 1 element, but that's a C value. But like for things like E and higher, especially, you're not going to learn them for the first time and then go, okay, I'm going to compete this in 4 weeks' time. Gymnastics teaches you how to be really patient. Patience is a virtue, as many say, but patient not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. Patience with yourself and patience with your progress, patience with your gymnastics and with the process. Because if you try and rush it, if you try and do things too quickly, you might hurt yourself. You might get in your own head about it. You might overthink it. You might end up giving up because the skills that you do will not come quick. There are often skills that you work on for years before they go into a routine. And this leads on to the next point, which is how to deal with failure. Failure is not something to avoid, like your life depends on it. Failure is something to embrace. It's something to understand that it is necessary. You must fail in order to get where you want to go. No matter where it is, no matter what it is, if it's above where you are now, you will have to fail to get there. But I mentioned on a recent episode that it's about failing forwards as opposed to failing giving up. This is what I mean. Failing forwards means you're making different mistakes. You are doing different things. You are trying something different and you're getting information from it and you're learning from it. Failing forwards means failing, but getting closer and closer and closer to the perfect or the correct outcome. Again, speaking to Roddy, his philosophy, I suppose, is I'll not fail. He then immediately went on to say, you will fail, but you just have to not let it get to you, essentially. You have to keep moving forwards over and over again. You have to find your way of doing it. Just because you can't do it one way doesn't mean you can't do it. It means you can't do it that way. You find your way, move forwards, and you'll get there. And like I said, these things are hugely important, not just within gymnastics, but outside of gymnastics too. You need to be able to fail. You need to be able to put your best out there and know that it might not be good enough. And know that you will have to try again over and over again just to be able to make improvements and etch closer and closer and closer to where you want to be. But again, it's not a short process. It never will be. If you want to make meaningful change, it won't be quick. And that's something that gymnastics can teach you. Not saying that everyone has to be a gymnast. I'm sure a lot of other sports are like this. But even if you do that, even if you're trying your absolute hardest, no matter how much effort you put in, if you're not directing it in the right way, you won't get the outcomes that you want. I spoke to Bryony Page recently. Wow, this really is just me plugging myself. Anyway, I spoke to Bryony Page recently. She spoke about her Rio Olympics 2016. In the build-up to that competition, in the build-up to the Olympics, she had a lot going on. I'll spare the details because she spoke about it at length. Not at length, but she goes over it in better detail than I can. But the main thing I want to focus on is how she was trying her absolute hardest. She was not giving up. She knew it was a long-term thing. She knew what she was getting herself into. She hadn't qualified for the 2012 Olympics and she wanted to get back. She wanted to have her shot. And she was trying her absolute hardest. But every time she got to the point of competing, she was so worried about failing and so desperate to get the outcome she wanted. She cracked under the pressure. She couldn't do it. And this is talking about one of the best competitors that you will ever see. She's been to 3 Olympics. She's gotten 3 Olympic medals, silver, bronze, and gold. So she can do it. She knew she could do it back then. But even if you put the effort in, you won't always get the result that you want. And it's a tough lesson. It's a really, really tough lesson. But gymnastics is that way. Sometimes you just don't get the result that you want. Maybe it's because of something that you've done. Maybe not. Maybe it's because you haven't directed yourself in the right way. Maybe you're putting effort in, but you're not putting it in the right place. And the ability to reevaluate and figure out what you're doing wrong and how you could improve and trial and error, failing constantly, but not getting knocked down by it and not being put off by it. That's what got her to her eventual Olympic gold. But in the case of Rio, to the Olympic silver and to one of the best routines that she could have possibly done in that moment. Obviously, things have changed now, and she's now one of the most decorated gymnasts that is still competing today. I say gymnast, she's a trampolinist. it's under gymnastics. I'm going to call it gymnastics. But that ability to know, okay, I'm putting the effort in. That is not the issue. I know for a fact I'm putting 100% in. Maybe I'm not putting it in the right place, or I'm clearly doing something wrong. Therefore, let's do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen again. Let's look at everything I'm doing, S&C, nutrition, sleep, psychology, all of that sort of stuff. Look at every single thing and figure out what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and have a plan to move forwards. And the ability to work consistently and figure out how what you're doing influences the outcomes that you're getting is really important too. And that's the next point I want to make, that consistency and hard work and effort in the right places is far more important than talent. I made a reel recently, or like I had a clip recently that went onto TikTok, went onto Instagram, that had me saying, within the context of the video, which was misconceptions in gymnastics, that I can't remember what the wording was, but basically I said the talent's more important than hard work, which is obviously not what I believe, but that may have been misconstrued. I may have made it a little bit difficult to understand what I was actually saying, in which case I'm sorry, but I want to talk about it here in a bit more detail, but also in a different way. So talent is important. You cannot be one of the best gymnasts in the world without talent. Like, that's simply a fact. You can't. You can't hope to be one of the best gymnasts in the world without some prerequisite something. Because some people just do have that thing. Some people have the thing that just makes them unbelievable at gymnastics. That doesn't mean they don't work hard. That means that they have a gift. And beating those people and beating the people that have the talent and work hard is damn near impossible. But just because that's the case, that doesn't mean that you can't work hard. That doesn't mean that they'll be perfect forever. That doesn't mean they won't make mistakes. And seizing your opportunity and giving yourself the best chance of success is super important too. You will always underestimate yourself. You'll always think that you are worse than what you are, or that you are not capable of what you are actually capable of. So you have to give yourself some credit first off, but then you have to put yourself in the best position possible to succeed. Because if you don't, you will never know where you could have gone. Maybe you are that generational talent. Maybe you are the person that will go to these events. Maybe you are the person that will go to these competitions and will make a difference and will actually shape the sport around you. Maybe you are that person, but you don't know unless you put everything into it. The point is that talent comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, especially in gymnastics. Men's artistic gymnastics, there are 6 apparatus. Some people will be talented on some people will be talented on others. And your strengths and your weaknesses, they will fluctuate a lot within your time in the sport. You will have some times where you feel amazing on some apparatus, and it will be for like years at a time. You'll feel amazing on some apparatus and you'll get great scores on them. And then suddenly one will just start spiking and you'll be like, okay, where did this come from? Like for me on P-bars, for years, I didn't think I was a P-bars worker. And now I've got a 5.5 start value on P-bars with potentially more that I could put in. And suddenly I'm thinking, wow, I could actually do something on this. I'm not someone like Angel Barajas, who's doing stupid difficulty on P-bars and high bar. He's super young and he's just able to move the apparatus, move himself around the apparatus like nothing you've seen. Just because that exists and just because he's amazing on those apparatus, that doesn't mean I won't ever match up to him. You've got time. Think about it. Someone like Max, he's still going somehow. I don't know how. He's still going though. He's well over 30 now. And because he's still going, that's a pretty shining example of how long you can actually go in this sport. Yes, he's a pommel specialist, but he still does the other apparatus. Like he still does P-bars, high bar. He's still learning new skills over 30. People think that gymnastics starts young, ends young. Across the board, that's not actually 100% true. That's not even at all true. So even if you don't think that you're talented now, that doesn't mean you're not. Maybe you just haven't found the right skills for you yet. Everyone is talented in some way, and everyone will be talented in some way within gymnastics. It's just that the specific things that make you talented within it won't often show themselves until you've spent years and years on it. And the idea that you are better than you think you are is really important, because a lot of gymnasts, myself included, will wrap themselves and their identity up within the sport. They will think that gymnastics is their life. They are a gymnast first and foremost and a person second. essentially. And their perspective will be warped purely around how they feel at the moment in gymnastics, purely around what's going on in the gym for them. And there's two ways to look at it, I suppose. One is that that's great because they're putting their all into gymnastics and they clearly care a lot about their gymnastics and what they're doing. But the other way of looking at it is that when gymnastics is not going well for those sorts of people, what do they have? What do they have to go back on? And how will they react? Because when gymnastics is the only thing you've got and gymnastics isn't going well, all you've got is not going well. Your life is not going well. Yes, people should be happy when they're doing well in the sport. And yes, it's impossible not to be sad when you put so much time and effort into it and things aren't going well. But that being your whole life and that being everything to you is not good, because then longer term, when you stop gymnastics, what have you got? What do you do? Who are you after your sport? Like, for example, myself, I speak about gymnastics. That's basically all I do. I train as a gymnast. I speak about gymnastics. I speak about gymnastics. I edit me speaking about gymnastics, and then I post me speaking about gymnastics. That's all I do. But at least when I talk about gymnastics, I don't have to be actively doing it. And when you are a gymnast and things are tough, you have to learn how to dissociate you with you as a gymnast. You have to realize that these are separate things, and your worth is not directly tied to how successful you are as a gymnast, or what you can do, what skills you can do, what start values you can do. As a person, you are valuable, not specifically just as a gymnast, because as a gymnast, you can think, and this is coming from experience and from things I've heard from other people, that you're just a number. All you contribute to the world is a score. That's something that people that are gymnasts can genuinely think, that all you contribute to the world is a score. And that's not great. And when things aren't going well, you have to understand you are more than the score that your name is attached to. You're more than the number that your name is attached to. You're more than what you can contribute to a team. But it's really hard to do that when you're so wrapped up in it. It's really hard to do that when you put so much time into it. When you've put time into it, when you know that it's not going to pan out in the short term. You know that you're going to fail. You know that you've got to put effort into the right place to get the outcomes that you want. And you know that you just have to be consistent and eventually you'll find it. Even when you know that stuff, it's easy to slip up. It's easy to feel like you're not doing enough and feel like you're letting yourself down or letting anyone else down. That's a very normal thing. It's very normal to think that you're going to let yourself down or going to let someone else down. But if you put 100% in, if you know that you've left nothing behind and you've given it your all and you've done everything you possibly can, then you've not let anyone down. You've not done anything wrong. Accidents, mistakes, injuries, they happen. And as a gymnast, you have to realize that. You have to realize that just because this one time it hasn't panned out, just because a couple times you've made mistakes, it doesn't mean you're a bad gymnast. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you failed. Again, it's not a short-term thing. It's a very, very long-term thing. It's all experience. Your entire gymnastics career is experience for your later life. And the majority of your gymnastics career is experience until you get to that one moment that counts. And if you think that moment is now, it might not be. There will be more chances. Gymnastics is a crazy sport. It's actually insane what people do with their bodies, what people are able to do when they work hard. And you'll see some of the people, like I said, some of the talented people do some insane skills, but they can do that, therefore they can't do something else. And I'll leave you with this. People won't see 99% of what you do. There will be very, very few people who will see everything that you do, or near everything that you do. No one will see everything that you do. Therefore, the only person that can judge you, the only person with the right to judge you is you. But you have to make sure that you're judging yourself fairly. If you want to evaluate what you're doing, where you're going, make sure you're doing it fairly. Make sure you're not upset. Or, by the same logic, make sure that you're not extremely happy when you're doing this, because then you will show a strong bias towards one direction, not the band that splits up. But when your entire identity and perspective can be wrapped around gymnastics, you do need to constantly evaluate where you are, what you're doing, where you're going. But when you do that, make sure you're in the right frame of mind, make sure you're fair to yourself, and don't underestimate yourself. People often overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 5. So dream big for the 5. Dream big for the cycles and the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games and the Europeans or the other competitions that you're doing, the nationals, the regionals. Dream big. But I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening to the Game of Gymnastics podcast. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, follow for more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.